You are the protagonist. This is a semen retention video. Yeah, this is sort of an ode to Christopher Nolan's Tenet movie. The last scene in it, when the protagonist gets in the back of the car and he says to the evil woman, I forget what her name is, but he says, I realized I wasn't working for you. We've both been working for me. I'm the protagonist. And this is this is how you're going to feel, right? This is how you're going to feel when you retain. And I often, on this channel, if this is your first time watching this video, I heavily sort of incorporate masculinity into semen retention because I think it is, they're inextricable, right? I don't think one can be truly masculine without retaining masculine energy. So in a way, being very masculine, the first requisite, the very first one, the most foundational requisite is that you have an abundance of masculine energy within you, right? Now there are a lot of other sort of requisites, but I think that's the most fundamental one. Getting your lust under control. How could you be a masculine man who can just be controlled so easily by the beauty of a woman? A pretty woman walks by and you don't have the power to keep it in your pants. You don't have the power to look at her objectively. You don't have the power to stay on your path. Would you just let your life get derailed? Would you, start chasing her? You know what I mean? Like that's the power of lust. That's the power of this. So that's why semen retention is so key, because any guy that's chasing women, that is super obsessed with women, that's super lustful, in my opinion, is just not masculine. You can be so easily controlled and manipulated, and eventually that will come to bite you in your life. But sort of getting back to this protagonist thing, and being sort of retaining your masculine energy here, you're going to feel like you are the main character of your life. You're no longer an extra. You're no longer sort of, the side characters. You are going to be the main character now. And, I think what's going to happen is, I've said often that when you do this for a while, I've been doing it for a year, not straight, but I've been doing it in total for a year. When you do this for a while, you start to express yourself in just it's in an organic way, right? It's in a very natural way. It's almost like you can't help it, right? You can't hold back sort of the beast that's been caged for a long time, right? So you are acting in a very organic, natural way, and it's not something that you're forcing, it's not something that you're repressing, but it's just how you would naturally act now will be a more powerful entity, right? You will be a more powerful person. Your words will carry more weight, right? You will be a more efficient, right? You'll be running on a higher sort of RAM than others around you, than most others around you, right? You'll be thinking quicker, smarter, more intelligently, more discerning. You'll be able to handle stress a lot better than others because you just have such an abundance of energy within you, right? But, obviously, with this greater sort of power comes greater responsibility. I think it's just kind of, it's part of being a man, right? It's part of being a man. If we're truly talking about you are being a masculine man, right? You're not a cucked beta feminine man, right? There's tons of them in the world, but I'm talking to masculine men, right? If you are truly a man, it seems that you can't escape people labeling you certain things, right? The way that you are going to be as a masculine man in this world, in the world that we currently live in. It might not have been this way in certain times in history, but in the world that we currently live in today, in these times, right? Hyper feminized times, right? When men have lost all their energy, when equality is at its peak, right? Women are most powerful. They have the most equality they've ever had in the history of the species, right? Me Too movement, all this stuff, right? Divorce rates sky high, dudes are just they're walking away, right? In these sort of times, you just being a man, right? You just being a man, you're not even doing anything wrong. You just being a man, you are probably going to get a lot of heat and lashback, right? There's going to be a lot of hate thrown your way, right? To be a man, to be a virtuous, disciplined, strong, not lustful man in this world, not only will you have way more control over yourself than others, and because of that, you'll have way more control over women, right? Excuse my throat here. You'll have way more control over women. And in these hyper feminist times that we live in, oh man, these masculine women are going to hate it. You can even hear the stuff that I'm saying right now, right? The stuff that I'm saying right now, I would be labeled, if you showed this to any, just mainstream, like, just show it to a liberal or, progressive or feminist or anyone, right? They would just say that I'm misogynist, I'm sexist, I'm awful, I'm terrible, like just what I'm saying right now. And what I'm saying is not controversial at all, right? It's just the truth. It's just the facts of what it means to be a man, right? In these times. And I actually don't think that there's many men out here that are truly embodying their masculinity, right? It's either from a lack of energy, a lack of masculine energy, which I think is the big problem, or it's some sort of, they've just they've just been cucked and traumatized, and they're just afraid of women. In which case, I just don't think that that's possible if you're retaining your masculine energy, right? Um, if you're a disciplined man, you're retaining your masculine energy, you're not engaging in lust, right? You're not partaking in stupid habits like drinking and smoking weed and all sorts of other stuff, right? If you are on a good, healthy lifestyle, you are just that. You are going to be so different, right? You're going to be so different. You're going to be the protagonist in the story. Everybody else is going to they'll be able, because you'll just be such a big figure, they're going to start to be able to throw things at you, right? Not physical objects, but they're going to be able to throw shade your way, right? Because you're a more powerful entity, because you have more energy, right? Because you're more unapologetic, you're just more resting in your masculinity, which there's nothing wrong with being a man, right? This channel isn't even about like women. I don't really even want to think about women, to be honest. I'm not even concerned about them. Why concern yourself with a woman? Like, when I think about it, if we just be the men that we're supposed to be, right? If we're being all that we can be, actually, right? I don't think you gotta, like, it'll all take care of itself. Women will just naturally become more feminine, more submissive, more sweet, more loving, more caring. They will engage with their femininity because our masculinity just requires it, right? It would be the only way for them to get a mate. Like, it'll be the only way for them to get a mate in this world, because you'd have men that are just so set in their ways, right? When men are so set in their ways, because men don't need women, right? Men don't need women. We we are drawn to them. There's a sort of allure, right? But we don't need them. Whereas I think women, I mean, it's definitely more of a need because they want to have children, right? They desperately want to have children, and I think it's definitely more of a need, and it's harder to be, you know, I think it's harder to be a woman in this world because they're just so much more emotional. They don't have the masculine energy within them, right? They're not as generally they're not as ordered as logical. Um, they are just way more chaotic, right? They're just more chaotic. They're more mercurial. And that's just their nature, right? But they are equally as important as men are, but in their femininity. And like that, like just what I said, right? Oh my God, I would be like, you know, if I'm sure there are a lot of women that if they could, like they would like hang me up and like burn me alive for literally what I just said. You know what I mean? So this is part of it, right? Part of you being the protagonist, part of you being on this path of withholding your masculine energy, being disciplined, right? Um, is going to be sort of responsibility of how do you want to be, right? How do you want to act, right? Um, and you'll probably notice that a lot of just the way that you act naturally is going to get a lot of flack, right? You just being a man, you just being yourself is going to get you a lot of flack. But this is the thing about men, right? This is the thing that we have to understand about ourselves is we don't care, right? You should never care if you know that what you're doing is right. If you know that you are acting from a place of virtuousness, which you are, you're acting from a place of virtuousness. You're acting from a place of discipline, right? You are doing something according to nature. You're abiding by nature's laws. If you know that deep in your heart, right? You know and God know, right? You know and the universe knows, right? That's all you need. That's all you need. Nobody, it don't matter if the whole planet's against you. It don't matter if all 8 billion people are against it, telling you you're wrong. You should know that you're right, right? Because you know within yourself, right? You know within yourself you're doing the right things, right? And this is just something that I think is key to being a man is you need to always think for yourself. You're going to have to think for yourself on this journey. You're going to have to finally start acting and thinking for yourself. And you won't it's almost like you want I'm like warning you that you shouldn't care, but if you're doing it, then naturally I think that what follows is you just don't care, right? You're just going to notice that you don't care the way that you used to. There's not as much fear in you because you have an abundance of energy within you. There's just not as much fear within you, right? But because you have abundance, right? Fear comes from like a scarcity, right? It comes from a place of not having much. It comes from a place of, just feeling like you're close to death. And when you're full of energy, like you got what everybody wants, right? You can't feel close to death. You can't feel stressed. You can't feel fear. I mean, you can feel fear, obviously, but you can't feel fear in the ways that you used to. So it's almost like you'll notice that you just naturally start to not care as much. You're not fearing as much what people think about you. You're not caring or fearing as much about what you say. You'll notice that sometimes sentences come out of your mouth that's like, whoa, that was a little, like, I would have never said that, before this, 6 months ago or a year ago or something like that. I wouldn't have said that, but I just said it like automatic. And I've noticed a few times, where I've said certain things, and it was that, right? I noticed, I was like, whoa. I was like, that was just completely automatic. I said something, I spoke my mind, but it was not like, it wasn't sugar coated. It was a lot more just kind of, it was a lot more just in your face. Like, it was a lot more just, this is how it is. And it's not always politically correct. It's not always, whatever. But what's interesting is that you'll notice that people around you, they're not gonna like, they kind of go with it. I noticed that myself. It's like, there were some times where I said these things, and like, the people just kind of went with it, and I was like, how? I was like, I was like, if this had happened in different sort of circumstances, I'm almost sure that I would have been, that they at least would have said something to me, but they just kind of went with it, as if, like, again, I've said it before, it's not about what you say, it's about who's saying it, like how, like the energy behind it, right? The energy behind the words, the power behind the words, the person who's saying it, the balance that they have, right? That is a key factor in things that are said. I've often said that, when a woman is evaluating like two men can say the exact same thing to her, exact same word for word. But if one has an abundance of masculine energy and the other doesn't, she's gonna be more drawn to the guy with the masculine energy. It's gonna come off more natural. It's just gonna hit her in a different way than it does than the other guy. You know. So yeah, this is the thing about semen retention, is you're gonna start to notice that you can't shy away anymore. You can't disappear. You're going to be, like I said, you're going to be anything but invisible. So you better be ready to be visible, is basically what I'm trying to, it's basically what I'm trying to get at. You better be ready to be visible, because you're going to be, right? People are now going to see you a lot more. They're going to hear you. You're going to express yourself in certain ways that are just more, I'm here, unapologetic. It's not to say that you're just, you know, some deranged lunatic, like you're just saying, espousing all these like sexist and racist things. Like, no. But you're going to be a lot more just kind of edgy, right? You're gonna be a little more, you can kind of stir the pot just by you being you, especially in this environment. This is the key. It's in this environment. That's why. Like, it's not necessarily you. It's more about the current, political and cultural landscape that we live in, right? This current landscape that we live in, the times that we live in, a man just being a man is like, you just get labeled, if you're actually being a man, you get labeled like cold, you get labeled rude, mean, misogynist, sexist, racist, homophobic, intolerant, all these things, right? You just get labeled that stuff. Now, obviously, it's possible for, I'm not saying that, if somebody if somebody calls you these things, that it just means that they're lying. Like, obviously, obviously, right? It's possible that a very masculine man can actually be sexist or misogynist or racist or, homophobic. It is absolutely possible, right? But in this current landscape, just make sure that you know that just because somebody calls you that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the truth. A lot of people like to smear today. They like to just, they like to smear because that's a way that they can control most men, because most men are so afraid today. They're so afraid of being called something, of being labeled something, their reputation or whatever. They're so quick to apologize. They're so quick to appease, right? Especially a room full of women. They just want to appease a room full of women. In my opinion, these are not men, right? These are just simply not men. A man does not care about appeasing a room full of women, right? It doesn't mean that he's gonna, blatantly go out of his way to, displease them, or, subjugate them or oppress them or whatever, or abuse them. No. It just means that that's not a priority. That's not something that he prioritizes, is, all these women got to be pleased, right? I don't want to say anything to offend them, especially when we're talking about words, you know what I mean? Like, if you're just speaking your truth, if you're speaking from the heart, your truth, if you're not hurling like insults, if you're not being directly rude or insensitive, right? Then if people have a problem with it, that's their issue, right? That is their issue. They can handle that. They can deal with that. That's not something you should be concerned with. And you know, this is just all part of being the protagonist, right? This is part of being the main character. Is, you know, yes, you might get a lot of the get a lot more attention, you get a lot more of the screen time, right? You get a lot more of the screen time, a lot more of the lines, right? Um, but also, because of a lot more attention, because of a lot more responsibility, you're just going to be in a position where people are going to have a problem. You're not always going to be loved, right? So it's just something to keep in mind. It's just something to keep in mind. You know, men today, we really got to get out of this sort of way of thinking that, if we're just ourselves, if we're just being men, right? If we're just doing what we like to do, retaining our seed, doing good things, being virtuous, being disciplined, getting after it ourselves, prioritizing ourselves, being selfish with our life, because everybody should be, and women included, right? They should focus on themselves, make themselves the best versions of themselves that they can be, right? Just because men are doing this, and what naturally comes of it, what naturally follows of it, which I argue is going to be amazing, it's going to be phenomenal. It's there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with, you being absolutely masculine, right? Just being who you are, right? Nobody's perfect, right? You're not supposed to be this person that's like trying to, you're just not supposed to be this person who's trying to appease everybody and please everybody, right? And, you're worried about saying this and you're worried about saying that. Like, it's endless. That is endless. What's going to happen is I've said it before, you'll disappear. You'll just disappear. You'll disappear. You'll never feel like you ever said anything, you ever did anything. You kind of betray yourself. Don't betray yourself, right? Men do not betray themselves. Do not get do not get swayed up in the crowd. Do not get swayed up in being labeled something. You got to have that internal knowledge of yourself. You can't betray yourself. You have to act according to your principles. You have to act according to yourself and your virtues and what you stand for, no matter what people say about you. No matter what people say about you, because you should know the truth about you. You, at the end of the day, know the truth about you. And so does God, so does the universe. And that's all that matters, right? That's all that matters. It don't matter what anybody else says. You know the truth. I think that's it. I think that's good. That's it. That's the video.